My sermon passage is Matthew chapter 2, verses 1 to 12. It's on page 2 of the Pew Bible. In the time of King Herod, after Jesus was born in Bethlehem of Judea, wise men from the east came to Jerusalem asking, "Where is this child who has been born King of the Jews? For we observed his star at its rising and have come to pay him homage." When King Herod heard this, he was frightened, and all Jerusalem with him. And calling together all the chief priests and scribes of the people, he inquired of them where the Messiah was to be born. They told him, "In Bethlehem of Judea, for so it has been written by the prophet. And you, Bethlehem, in the land of Judah, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel." Then Herod secretly called for the wise men and learned from them the exact time when the star had appeared. Then he sent them to Bethlehem, saying, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word, so that I may also go and pay him homage." When they had heard the king, they set out, and there ahead of them went the star that they had seen at its rising, until it stopped over the place where the child was. When they saw that the star had stopped, they were overwhelmed with joy. On entering the house, they saw the child with Mary, his mother, and they knelt down and paid him homage. Then, opening their treasure chests, they offered him gifts of gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And having been warned in a dream not to return to Herod, they left for their own country by another road. Here ends the reading of these words inspired by God. May God grant us wisdom and courage for interpretation. We three kings of Orient are bearing gifts. We traverse afar, field and fountain, moor and mountain, following yonder star. We all know that song, and surely we're all fond of it. Even though even casual students of the Bible know it says nowhere in there that there were three visitors from the east. It says they brought three gifts: gold, frankincense, and myrrh. And the text really doesn't say that they're kings either. It says they were wise men, or astrologers, or scholars. Technically, they were magi. They may have been priests in the Zoroastrian religion of Persia, where there was one god that they worshipped, when Persia was an enemy of Rome. They were priests, and as priests they had access to political power, so they were a threat to Rome. That's partly why they were a threat to Herod. Whereas it says in verse 3, King Herod was frightened, and all of Jerusalem with him, because Herod's power rested in Roman power. And any threat to Roman power was a threat to King Herod's power. And so priests coming from another empire to pay homage and respect to a little baby who is already being called the King of the Jews, that was huge. It was a direct threat to Jerusalem and to Roman homeland security. So Herod fakes it. He says, "Go and search diligently for the child, and when you have found him, bring me word so that I may also go and pay him homage." Well, right. What King Herod means is, find me that baby. So with all the political intrigue and threats to power swirling around the story, all the threats to power swirling around this simple child story, it was easy at one time for people to conclude that the wise men, the Magi, however many there were, that they were kings, especially if you look at Isaiah 60 verse 3. That's how that's tied together into where the conclusion was made long ago, that they were kings. But I don't think they were. And it's not me. They weren't kings. So, what are some other possible names for that great song that we all love? And let's stick with three because, well, it's a pretty important number for us, right? For obvious reasons. And it's easier to picture three visitors, frankly, because there were three gifts. How about we three magi? I think that word's too unfamiliar. We get the word magician, actually, from the word magi. So how about we three magicians? I don't think we probably want to sing We Three Magicians in church. We three priests, I don't think we want to sing We Three Priests in a congregational church. We three visitors, I think that's too blah. So here's my suggestion. We three seekers. And if that sounds a little too Oprah for you, a little too New Age or whatever, then let's go old school. We three students. Because the wise men as seekers were definitely students, because study is the regular spiritual practice of seekers, or it used to be, and it still should be. These guys coming to find the baby Jesus, the King of the Jews, the Messiah, these wise men coming to the Christ, they were students. And I wonder if that doesn't get lost in the telling of the story and the singing of We Three Kings. Seeing the star was not a fluke. The men saw it because they were students learning. They were looking for a sign, and God gave them one. It took discipline, as all study takes discipline. And it took a sense of adventure, as any experience of God requires. And it took a certain defiance toward those who were less studious and less adventurous. And I think that, too, is a mark of anyone who seeks Christ and finds him. Blair Gilmer Meeks. She is a writer and editor in Preaching and Worship, and here's how she imagines the wise men, the travelers from the East. In the old country, the travelers had been court advisors, learned astronomers, dreamers, and stargazers. They became wanderers and searchers. They set the king's cabinet to murmuring, laughing behind their backs when news of their quest became fodder for the court gossip mill. They had determined to make a journey, an ill-advised one, into unknown territory with little idea of their final destination. They would not become lost. That was not one of their problems. They knew the night sky, and they could find their way home from anywhere. The real obstacle was the uncertainty, the question of where they were going and what they would find when they got there. There were other hazards, of course. There were bandits on the road. There were insurgents in the hills. There was the scarcity of decent food and water on their journey. The deserts were trackless and blazing with heat. The mountains were treacherous, windswept, and cold. But one of them had a fragment of a scroll, lost long ago by Hebrew exiles. At night by the campfire, he read to the others from it, and in the daytime, phrases came echoing back, making the journey bearable. From Isaiah 40, every valley shall be lifted up, and every mountain and hill be made low. The uneven ground shall become level, and the rough places plain. Then the glory of the Lord shall be revealed, and all the people shall see it together, for the mouth of the Lord has spoken. Blair Gilmer Meeks goes on, with no one to interpret, they were sustained by the beauty of the words and spurred on by the hope of seeing God's glory when it was revealed. A sign had come to them, an unmistakable indicator in the sky, which they read like an open book from Isaiah 9. For a child has been born for us, a son given to us, and he is named Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. A child born to rule this war-torn world in endless peace? A promised reign of justice and mercy unlike anything the earth had known? Such a child must be sought and worshipped. Such a destination was worth the journey. They arrived at Jerusalem, and scholars that they were, they decided it would be prudent to consult the local court sages. That was a mistake. The travelers had proper credentials from their king, but King Herod, Caesar's insecure puppet, was suddenly overly friendly, ingratiating, when they asked the question, where is the child who has been born king of the Jews? Herod called in everyone who might know something, and someone did know about Micah's prophecy. And you, Bethlehem, are by no means least among the rulers of Judah, for from you shall come a ruler who is to shepherd my people Israel. And Meeks goes on with the story. Herod, it was clear, was afraid they would find a true king. Not the least of his concerns was about his own heir's succession. The wise travelers listened to their dreams, and they understood all this. They resolved not to return this way and become Herod's informers. Their last night in the inn was sleepless. The innkeeper and some of his guests were loud in the courtyard below. Their room was filthy. Their bed was full of fleas. They got up shortly after midnight, and guided by the brilliant star, they went on to Bethlehem. The star stopped over the place where the child lay, and they went inside with their gifts: gold for a king who would rule in love, frankincense for a priest who leads us to God, and myrrh, a burial spice for his death that their encounter with Herod had seemed to foretell. Now, there's no record that anyone told anyone in their own country of this experience. Who would believe the story of an arduous journey in the middle of nowhere, of finding a king who by all appearances was a poor child, born to an ordinary family? But their journey has become, like the star they followed, a beacon to all who search for God's way of hope and peace. The star that guided them carried a promise from God for the homecoming of all God's people. From Isaiah 60. Lift up your eyes and look around. They all gather together. They come to you. Your sons shall come from far away, and your daughters shall be carried on their nurses' arms. Then you shall see and be radiant. Your heart shall thrill and rejoice. Arise, shine, for your light has come. And so, church, at the end of this year, rather at the start of this new year, in the spirit of the wise men, I ask, what is our beacon today in our ongoing search for God's ways of hope and peace? Our light has come. Shall we arise and shine, or shall we shuffle along familiar paths, stumbling sometimes as we go, because we have indeed stumbled a little? So, church, at the start of this new year, in the spirit of the wise men, I challenge us, let's do some homework. The Magi did not stumble onto the star. They didn't bump into the Christ child while looking for someone else. They studied the skies. They studied the skies, and they studied the rest of the world around them. They studied their own sacred writings and the writings of others. They were not seekers in the New Age sense. They were searchers in the age-old sense. So, church, at the start of this new year, in the spirit of the wise men, I ask you, shall we study? I'm not talking about another class, although, of course, it would involve some meetings. And I'm not talking about something else to read, not just that, although it would require some reading, some study, and some homework. We can work out the time and the place and some of the other details, but I'm asking. I'm talking basics. And I'm talking going back to basics. Who are we? How did we get here? Where are we going? And I suggest an old-fashioned confirmation class for all of us. A deliberate effort by all of us, by each of us, to learn again about the Christian faith and about the wider church and about this church. Its history, its relationships, its associations now and in the past, and what it can mean to be a Christian in the world, in the United States, in Oklahoma, in Carrier. Let's be wise, men and women. Let us seek salvation. Like the visitors from the east, let us come together. Let us come together to the light. Let us come to Jesus. Amen.